Hi everyone, I'm Airier, and welcome to Geek. This is basically where I'm going to jump in and compare two different universes and see how they match up. This, though, is going to be Warhammer 40K versus Doctor Who. Yes! Yeah! Now, for anyone who doesn't know 40K, I'm actually going to leave a link below to Luton. He's specifically a lore channel for 40K, and if you're wondering why you might need a channel specifically dedicated to just one franchise's lore, 40K has been around for almost 40 plus years now. It's big. And while the lore has really only kicked into high gear within the last 20 years, 20 years, there is a lot going on. And for Doctor Who, they look at that 40 years like, haha, we got you beat by a decade. A few years ago, they had 50 years as an anniversary. Yeah, these are two very long-running, very heavily supported, very dedicated British franchises. Yeah, they're both British. It's why everyone has a British accent in the future. But what we're going to be looking at right now is going to be a breakdown of how does Doctor Who specifically interact with 40K. Who wins? Who's going to win this fight? Who's going to kick each other's ass? And let's be completely honest, there's a lot of ways this could go, and all of them are probably controversial. Specifically though, there's a way I like to break this up. When I do a matchup, I want to take one setting into the other and then reverse it to see what happens on the other side. In this case, it would be Doctor Who invading Warhammer 40K. I'm actually, just to cut down on this video so it doesn't become an ungodly massive slog, this is specifically going to be looking at Doctor Who, specifically the Doctor, the title character of the entire franchise. And I do say franchise because there's actually various other shows that have spun off from it, but it's all based on the Doctor. Him going into the Warhammer 40K universe. Now, just to stop before we go any further, spoilers. Lots of spoilers. Okay, now, how this could happen? This is actually a contrivance that has happened in Doctor Who multiple times on multiple, both episodes, radio dramas, short stories. It's actually happened quite a few times that the Doctor just randomly appears in a parallel universe. Sometimes similar, always in London, because that's where they shoot, but also because London, it's where the Doctor likes to go, so he does. Because plot reasons, which again, or in Doctor Who's case, because the TARDIS decided to do it, and yes, that is a thing. For anyone who doesn't know, the TARDIS is the blue box he runs around in. It's a sentient time machine that is also technically aware of all time and space that it could ever inhabit, and probably that would include everything because it's a time and space machine. It goes anywhere, anywhen, anyhow. And it's aware of all of it. So whenever it's a plot contrivance, really it's just the TARDIS deciding to go somewhere. Which is, again, canon to Doctor Who. That is a thing. So the Doctor just gets dragged into Warhammer 40K. First up, to keep this short, I'm only going to be comparing him to the Imperium because that's humans. And the Doctor, even though he's not a human himself, is very human-focused. This is something that he does. He finds humans. He likes humans. He interacts with humans. He always has human companions. He is someone who shouldn't fit right in with 40K. He's kind, he's empathetic, he's caring, he's moral, and he's one single person. And the advantage 40K has, specifically the Imperium, is oh my god levels of overwhelming firepower. And by oh my god, I specifically mean oh my god Emperor levels of overwhelming firepower. It is a literal thing. In a matchup against any universe, 40K usually has a very good shot just because they can bring more Daka, which anyone who isn't aware of that, Daka is a jokish phrase orcs use for more firepower shooty stuff. And it sounds funny so people keep doing it. As in, I think it's stupid and hilarious, so I will probably say it multiple times. Just a warning. The Doctor, though, is one person. He can't outshoot an army. He might actually be able to outrun an army, but he cannot outshoot. He cannot outfight them. No matter how much he tries, he cannot do that on strictly big, blowy, uppy levels of guns. Part of that is that the Doctor will not use guns. It's one of his character traits. He carries around a sonic screwdriver. He won't use a gun. He's holed them before. He, in one of the specials, used it to leave a message in a wall, and then he threw the gun down and left it there because he doesn't use guns. Apparently he'll write with them. And yes, that sentence is weird. but he will fight. Don't get me wrong. The Doctor has 3 advantages here that are very much something 40K cannot deal with. And I'm not even going to, really try and... I just want to say spoil, but this isn't even a spoil. It's hide the fact that in a matchup between specifically the Doctor, if he's thrown into Warhammer, into the entire 40K universe, he is in a very unique position where most people cannot do nearly enough to make an impact. He's, well, not functionally immortal, maybe functionally immortal. As of the end of Matt Smith's run, turning into Peter Capaldi, yeah. As of that one, he might actually be functionally immortal. I'm not sure. We'll probably find it out in another 50 to 30 years. He has all the time in the world. Specifically all the time in the universe. Not just the galaxy, the universe. And that's one of the first advantages he has. He's not limited in terms of where he can go because he has a TARDIS. He can go anywhere. He can go anywhen. And that's something the Imperium and most of 40K cannot match. There's actually quite a few very good breakdowns of what a generic response from the Imperium would look like. Short of a crusade bringing overwhelming firepower immediately, there is a layered proportionality. The Doctor is one person at one place at one time that they know of. But he's really not, because he can be anywhere, anywhen, and he will because he's hyper on life pretty much. He runs all over the place like a manic hamster on a crack trip. He will move on before he realizes that he's being hunted by the Imperium because he probably fucked that stuff up. And by that I mean he's very much a busybody. He gets in, he fixes what he thinks wrong, and there is a lot wrong in the Imperium. Any single place he goes, he will dig into. He will, I want to say fix, but sometimes the Doctor is more like, you know what, this is too fucked up to exist, and just wipes the slate clean. So he would definitely shake up the status quo, either by fixing it, making people better, taking out the people who are making it worse, or generally just being his usual busybody self. He doesn't stay out of the way well. In fact, he's explicitly bad at that. By design. His own specifically. He's just very much a busybody. No matter the army size, they cannot respond to him because he can move on faster than they can get to him. Average time for a quick response by the Imperium could be counted in centuries. The Tau, for example, in 40K, when they first started annexing worlds, they took them over, they thought maybe, hey, we kind of know there's more out here. What if the rest of their people are going to try and come and get us? And then after a couple years, nothing happened. Decades later, they're like, oh, I guess that wasn't a problem. After a full century, then there was a crusade and, shit got real. If you have a single guy who's just causing social strife and maybe just destroying worlds, it wouldn't really be worth it to send someone to protect a world that's been destroyed, so they might just write it off. And that is something the Imperium does. They are so sprawling and huge that they do write off dead worlds. If they had to respond, if they were moving incredibly fast, they could not catch him. Because most of the times he's acting, he will be popping around an individual area frequently. A couple of days is a long time for him. The longest time that I have ever seen represented in any medium involving the Doctor that he stayed in one place while having access to a TARDIS, that's an important part there. The longest he ever stayed was a full year back during the Matt Smith run, the 11th Doctor, where he stayed with his companions at the time at their house without leaving for a full year. And it drove him practically insane.
I hate being patient. Patience is for wimps.
The Imperium would have to basically already be there by accident to respond in a year. And he won't stick around for a year. That's so far beyond his ability to willingly do, unless there is a very good reason that it's practically impossible. He can do it, but he really, really will avoid that. That is very much his capabilities, but not his intended modus operandi. And yes, I have been looking for a reason to say that word. There are some crazy psychers. I honestly have no idea if Mephiston could or not. I literally don't know much about him, at least in terms of can he see the future and or past in places he's not been or interested in? If he can, okay, yeah, maybe he could respond. But I doubt it because, I mean, he's a blood angel. He's probably got other things that are more important, like, you know, being a space marine and fighting and doing that stuff. But when you come into the time travel aspect, he can go to modern day Earth. He can go to far future Earth. He can go to the 50, the hundreds, to the end of the universe. Because he's done that already. He's gone to his own universe's end. Did not work out well, and I don't think he would do that willingly again because it was really kind of a bad idea. In 40K, as long as he stays to the 40K frame, even plus or minus thousands of years, that's not the biggest jumps he's ever made. He would definitely be able to get around anything because, well, if he jumps prior, no one would even know to react to him. And if he jumps later, they're probably like, "Wait, I think we heard about you so long ago. What happened to you? I thought you were dead." And that's if they even remember him, because knowledge isn't a thing that circulates well in 40K. So them not knowing who he is would actually play to his advantage. What would make it even crazier is that he might, inadvertently, preempt massive changes to the 40K timeline. Now, there are actually quite a bunch of theories coming out recently that the 40K timeline is malleable to an extent. Time travel is a thing in 40K. There is a well-cited example of an orc who went back in time, killed his past self so he can get 2 copies of his favorite gun. Some people believe that the entire 40K timeline is actually a splintered, multi-dimensional interaction. So sometimes when facts don't match up, it's because it's multiple timelines. Things are happening at different times or at the same time in different locations with different people doing the same role in different times in different places but at the same area with the same outcome, but that different outcomes that move in the general direction. And that last part's the only part that has to make sense because it moves in a general direction. Things kind of happen in a certain way at a certain time. What you need to know about entire aspects of time in 40K is that it's malleable. The multi-universal interactions, that's... honestly, it's mostly just covering for the fact that the writers for 40K lore sometimes forget decades worth of material and then write their own thing. 40K does have people, though, who can interact and understand the perspective of a Time Lord on time. One of them would be the Emperor. Now, he's functionally out of action in 40K. Now, if we go back to 30K or earlier, he could interact. And I'm actually hesitant to speculate on this because this gets a lot into speculation of the Emperor, and while that's a lot easier recently because of the Horus Heresy series, showing good chunks of the Emperor as a person interacting and doing things, it's also highly suspect that a lot of it is written from a heretic viewpoint, even when it's not, especially when it's not. But from what we know, the Emperor is, to a great deal, near omniscient. Not omniscient, but near it. He can probably see and feel the changes to his plans by the Doctor mucking around. The big question I would have is, would the Emperor be antagonistic or try to take advantage of the fact that there's someone popping around and making things better? I don't actually know. In the 40K timeline, it wouldn't really be a thing because he's not entirely helpless, but rendered so unable to have drastic effect on the universe that it would functionally be the same as if he was rendered helpless. The Doctor, though, could preempt so many of the issues with time travel. And equally, he could make so many of the issues happen with time travel. But because of the structure of 40K, any change he makes will probably fit within the general overarching narrative. For example, he saves the world. That's great. It doesn't matter because it would be destroyed by some kind of horrible thing later. Or they would be up, taken somewhere, or something would happen to invalidate the change. Sort of. There's always that aspect of gradual change. Things are going to be different with the Doctor, but he also won't destroy anything. He won't undo the Imperium of Man because 40K's timeline isn't as malleable as that. Things will happen.
But this is fixed. This is a fixed point in time.
Fixed points can be rewritten.
No, they can't. Of course they can't. Who told you?
There will be a Horus Heresy. there will be the beast. There will be horrible, horrible things like the wars in the past against the Men of Iron. That, though, is where things get interesting. The Doctor involving himself during those periods. Now, he doesn't usually act above a local, maybe even planetary or system-wide level. But he has the capability to do things that affect universes. Every single faction other than the Tau has basically gone through multiple apocalypses multiple times on multiple levels and lost more power than anything has ever gained 100 times over. So him being there and having a Time Lord's understanding of technology and time in general, he could just go and ask people about it and learn from them, which he might do because it'd be fun. So there's all this tech lying around. He can go get new copies. He can go get old copies. He would probably laugh at the historians because, one, he does that in general. It's actually a canon trait. He makes fun of historians. He does that as an explicit thing. Two, history in the Imperium is, yeah. But when it comes to time travel, this entire narrative, everything I've said about how he interacts with it, is the exact same thing as what would happen. It's different. He could make some worlds better. He can make some worlds not anymore. But the sheer scope means that what he does on the time aspect is, oddly enough, not as important because of the malleable nature reforming around him. Whereas he might be able to make more individual changes at a macro level if he does it. Until he is pushed to that point, he would just do those surgical insertions where he's just doing something here or over here, with this town, with this village, with the city, with the state, with the government, with the entire world. Until he reaches a segment-wide, sectum-wide, or even the galaxy and what he'll eventually get to, universal side of encompassing everything, until he makes changes that break out of the flow of 40K time, he's going to be rather limited on that aspect. Now, this is an advantage, though, because the same way that just moving around in time or moving around to the space would, he can't be caught because there's almost nothing that could interact with him at that level. The Emperor could. Eldar Farseers, they're not calling them that anymore because apparently copyright wasn't strong enough for them, but they could see him, but they might not be able to interact with him as well because, well, all he has to do is move around in time one more and their plans are kind of like, well, crap. It's hard to predict someone's future when they're in your past. And their future is your past, and then vice versa, and then it changes the next day. Yeah. Timey-wimey, spacey-wacy shenanigans. It's a thing.
Nani?
Timey-wimey, spacey-wacy shenanigans.
Nani?
Timey-wimey, spacey-wacy shenanigans.
お前はもう死んでいる。
Time travel, though, is the workaround, because even though there's many aspects that could preempt it, the Doctor knows how to work with that because Time Lord. Time Wars are a thing he's used to. Maybe not ever wanting to, engage in again, actively avoiding because, oh god, the last time there was a Time War, This is why I say, in terms of martial prowess, he could do what he needs, if not in a straight-up fight. He cheats. He utilizes technology to the highest effect, he finds what will work, and then he cheats out a win. The time travel aspect, though, is he can deal with time travel. He can deal with people who understand time. He can screw around with them by popping around in places where they probably didn't foresee, and just his very existence kind of nullifies prophecy because it doesn't really matter when your prophecy is his yesterday and he already changed it, so you're wrong. This is why I think he's just so hard to pin down, at least on the time aspect, because he invalidates anyone who has time. They can interact with him. They will probably be antagonistic. The Emperor, if he sees the Doctor making things better overall, he might not be antagonistic, if only because, hey, less work, good outcome. One alien finally helping, who'd have thought? The first two aspects that give Doctor Who his greatest advantages are the fact that he can go anywhere, and the fact that he can go any when. I honestly think the first one is more important because it's just harder to respond and it can dick around people immediately. The second one is more esoteric because it gives him mastery over something that people are able to interact with in 40K and previous timelines and probably future timelines if we ever get around to them. But they're not masters of, unlike, a Time Lord who would be a Lord of Time, which is an earned title. He's actually Gallifreyan as a species, but a Time Lord is the title he earns by mastering it. The third aspect, though, is that the Doctor has one last advantage. And it's kind of wrapped up in a few things, but essentially, it's him, the Doctor himself. Now, he's not the most aggressive. He's not the most militaristic. He's not the most able to fight a battle. But he is the most likely to shatter the status quo, to overthrow tyrants, to make change happen. Whether for good or bad, that is literally his thing. And he does it by being smarter, wilier, more of a cheater, being more adaptable, being more knowledgeable, being more. He is everywhere he needs to be. Then again, part of that's because the TARDIS takes him there. Yeah, that's actually a thing. He's not unbeatable. He's not that strong. I mean, he's stronger than a human. He could do a lot of really crazy things if he pushes himself. But he usually doesn't, and he doesn't usually need to. And again, some of the crazy levels of strength displayed in 40K, 30K, or any previous or later time, yeah, no, that wouldn't really be a thing. And he's incredibly intelligent. Possibly the most intelligent being in 40K. 30K, I don't know, maybe. The Emperor, I really don't know how smart he is. Probably very. But when they describe Primarch levels of intelligence, they make it sound like the Doctor. The difference is, Primarchs don't think of themselves as having human flaws, which is kind of what caused the heresy, because yeah, they had human flaws. They were still human. They had human drives and emotions, and those were what kind of dicked them over because they didn't know to face them. The Doctor, though, he can think on levels that Primarchs are used to, and Primarchs are basically demigods in the material plane. The advantage the Doctor has is he knows how to think. Not just that he had better tutors, but he's had more experience. He's done more, he's seen more, he's been to more places, he's experienced more cultures, he's had his worldview changed and broken multiple times, and he's come back. He has been a wreck. He has been broken and destroyed and despondent, and he's pulled himself back with and without help. Primarchs, when they break, they go demon, and then they stay broken. The Doctor can do practically anything. This isn't just about his technology base, which is huge, because, I mean, he can go anywhere to get anything he needs whenever, so yeah, that's a thing. When the Doctor killed everyone, it's because he utilized technology at such a monstrous level that it would kill everyone. Because he knew how to use it, he knew how to find it, and he knew how to get it out of the highly protected vaults that were supposed to keep everyone out, and he just kind of did that as a whim, and he had it. Because he was going to do it. And this is something that he had to struggle over, because kill them all on both sides of a time war. That would entail killing multiple aspects of someone over multiple incursions of time, over multiple iterations of time, over multiple layers of time. For every one person, they might have 100 to 1,000,000 to 1,000,000,000 different future alterations and aspects. Because time, when you're fighting on that level, it's all over the place. You might kill someone, but then they're not dead because someone else did something that undid them being killed, so you never killed them. You might have multiple aspects of the same person in the same place, because that is a thing, and it happened in the 50th episode. You might have people doing crazy-ass shit, and the Doctor had a weapon that could kill it. The moment. Now, I don't believe the moment exists in 40K, but Terra has a vault of horrible, horrible weaponry that should never exist, and they still haven't unleashed. And a lot of it is from the dark age of technology, or humanity's golden age, when the men of iron, AIs, were a thing helping prop up entire human civilizations. From a time when humans were so powerful, the orcs signed peace treaties not to fight. For anyone who doesn't know 40K, the orcs are basically battle-hungry monsters who are fine with dying entirely if they get a good fight out of it. They love 40K because there's nothing but war, and this is paradise for them. They didn't want to fight humanity during the Golden Age because, I don't know. No one knows. The Emperor would because he lived through it. He's freaking immortal. But that's the level of crazy we're talking about. A species that lives to fight, that only fights, that does nothing but fight and kill and slaughter and war all the time as their greatest joy in existence. They didn't want to fight humanity at that age. And the Doctor has access to anything they had. Under almost no circumstance would he be pushed there normally. Would he ever need to go and get something normally from that age, or from the wars in heaven, or from the height of the Eldari Emperor? He has access to all the technology that he knows exists. Because he can go anywhere, anywhen, and he can get it. Because he's smart enough to get around anything, and he can always get out because TARDISes are bullshit like that. He could always, if given time, get the weapon he needs to win. The only deciding factor is, how badly does he need to do that? And for the Doctor, that's a thing, because he's generally honorable. He's generally a good person who tries to do the right thing, who doesn't want to hurt people. But he can be pushed.
He never raised his voice. That was the worst thing. The fury of the Time Lord. And then we discovered why. Why this Doctor, who had fought with gods and demons, why he'd run away from us and hidden. He was being kind.
He froze one in time as a scarecrow in a field, which doesn't sound that bad, except aware for eternity, unable to be altered. Just there, aware but inviolate. Watching eternally as nothing happens. A prisoner in your own body and your own mind. Eternally. Another was thrown into the event horizon of a black hole and held there. The universe will change around them, and they're just aware enough to perceive their inevitable end, slowly tearing them apart. And yet they'll be doing it for eternity, dying slowly, because the event horizon of a black hole is a time event that does really weird shenanigans with reality. And a third, you put into a reflection of a mirror. They're just stuck there. Any mirror. In the back of your eye, if you see a flicker, that would be them. In Doctor Who, he explicitly did that monster. But they're never able to leave. They just have to watch the world and never do anything. Never to be free for eternity. He punishes people forever. Because when he's pushed, he becomes incredibly vindictive. Eternal punishment is something he has done multiple times. This is a level that even the Chaos Gods in Warhammer 40K cannot technically access, because even they are self-destructive, and when one of them finally wins, when the universe finally wins, they would have to restart. That's the only way their people get free, if someone's freed from them, because they wouldn't be there anymore. The Doctor, he might find a way around that if he's truly pushed far enough, to suffer multiple eternities. Because when he's that angry, he can do horrible acts. Not Drukhari or Dark Elf act. Yeah, space Dark Elves. They're torturers. They cause pain at an unfathomable level. The Doctor, it's more poetic usually. It's earned. And it's horrible. And the only limiting factor for him, the only thing keeping him from doing that, I'm not even going to say his morals, because that's a personal thing, but not an overall you cannot do it restriction. His only limiting factor is his knowledge of time. Specifically, he can't change events that he knows already to be true. But if he's dropped into Warhammer 40K, nothing. He knows nothing. He could change anything. And while the Warhammer 40K structure itself seems to be overall stable, he doesn't know that. And by his own internal rules of time travel, of how time travel works with the Doctor, with the TARDIS, if he doesn't know something is set in stone, it isn't. He could change the fate of planets. And while it might not matter because, say, he destroyed a planet and it would have been destroyed 100 years later or 1,000,000 years later, there's 1,000,000 years of change, and that might branch out in other ways. 40K time is malleable to a point, but the Doctor can hit that point every time, and maybe, overall, certain events might happen, but they'll happen differently. They will happen better, or for the enemies he's facing, much, much worse. He can be pushed to find technology, to find solutions to problems. All he has to do, though, is be pushed to the point where he feels he needs to, and then he will, because he has the aspect, he has the drive, he has the dedication, and he has the vengeful persona to push for that. Now, I will eventually, at other times, go back into other aspects. What would happen if Warhammer invaded the Doctor Who universe? Now, that would change, because that would be more focused on the universe as a whole rather than the Doctor. And that wouldn't negate a lot of the issues, but that's for later. And then there's the aspects of the Doctorverse, the other aspects of the Warhammer universe. Against a lot of the various Xeno references and species, it would be interesting, but I think the Doctor has it. But when you get to the higher level entities, like not just the Tyranids, but the Tyranid hive mind against the Chaos Gods, that's going to be fascinating to get into. But that's for another video. Either way, though, guys, if you like this, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe down below. And more importantly, tell me who you want me to check out next. I have seen a lot of people on the last video pointing in Star Wars and Mass Effect. A lot of those two specific. Like, seriously, I'm going to need to go and brush up on all Mass Effect again. Love the games. I'm not going to acknowledge Andromeda. Yeah, good points. Mostly they were in comparison to games that came out later the same year. But yeah, let me know what you want to see next, and I'll get to it. And for everyone else, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.